Thank you, John. Chuka.
Well, thank you very much, Gavin. It's so difficult to follow John, isn't it, when you, when you basically agree with everything he says. Before I start, actually, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody here who helped me stand here as the Labour Member of Parliament for Streatham. It's deeply humbling, and I simply couldn't have done it without many people in this room, so thank you very much. Before I begin, actually, I do just want to say a little something about our man here, Mr. Cruddus, and actually also Compass itself. I know that many people in this hall were extremely disappointed when John decided not to run for the leadership of the Labour Party. I know that many more out in the country will share in that disappointment. John said he couldn't stand just to contribute to a debate. He said he did not want to be Labour's leader or Prime Minister because both roles require certain qualities that he does not possess. To stand for election to Parliament, let alone to be leader of a political party, involves a certain amount of self-promotion. One might say a touch of ego. Just consider what we do to get elected. How many people do you know send out copious amounts of self-promotional literature to thousands of people, most of whom they have never met? I mean, it's really quite odd behaviour when you look at it like that. And the thing is about John is this: it's never been about him. John has always been about the politics and the ideas, not grand plans and personal ambition. That is why, when he ran to be Deputy Leader, he made it clear that he didn't want to become Deputy Prime Minister. Ironically, that's why so many people thought John would have been such a fantastic leader. But there we are. John has made his decision, and we must respect it. But in making that decision, I think John makes a very important point, and that is that politics is not a career. It is a mission. Too many people forget this, but John certainly hasn't. Robin Cook, after whom this conference is so appropriately named, certainly didn't when he left the cabinet out of principle over Iraq. So though we might not have John as our leader, thank God we have him there to keep people like me on the straight and narrow and to remind us when we lose our way what this is all about. In making such a huge contribution and mapping out a vision as John has done today and has been doing, John has raised the bar in what we expect from those who are on the ballot paper. Wishy-washy platitudes and generalisations will not do. We need an honest appraisal of what we got right and where we went wrong, and above everything else, we need a vision, the kind of vision that was wholly absent from the general election campaign, a vision around which policy can be built and society can be changed. Now, over 1,000 people have been discussing what that vision of the good society should look like at this Compass conference today. And Compass is not an organisation that simply talks the talk. It is a pressure group that walks the walk, as last year's successful campaign to stop the ludicrous part privatisation of the Royal Mail demonstrated. So today, as always, is just the beginning. In March this year, the Sunday Times published a list of prospective newcomers to the Parliamentary Labour Party. It was headlined, "Look out, here come the Red Barons." In the piece, I was described as follows: Chuka Umunna, Streatham, may dress and sound like a Blairite, but do not be fooled. He sits on the management committee of Compass, the left-wing group that has called for a renationalisation of the railways and a ban on all outdoor advertising. Think about a few things. Politicians from all major parties now talk about the social recession, the good society and the limits of consumerism. Compass was there 5 years ago. To his credit, Ed Miliband supports the creation of a high pay commission. The first coverage of that idea came when Compass, we, started campaigning on it a year ago. Calls to review the replacement of Trident seem to be reaching a crescendo. Compass led the parliamentary rebellion on that issue in 2007. Electoral reform is this season's most fashionable proposal. Compass places it at the core of what we believe in. There is a world of difference between the political fringe and the cutting edge, and we know where Compass is. I joined Compass in 2003 when I was most disillusioned with New Labour. I joined because I felt my party had lost its way. I thought Compass could help us get back on the right track. How do I feel we lost it? Well, as John has already touched on, remember Labour's famous 1997 pledge card. Among the pledges were the commitments to implement a national minimum wage and get 250,000 young people off benefit and into work, wait for it, with a windfall tax on the privatised utilities. Who would have thought that? We abolished the assisted places scheme and used the money to reduce class sizes in primary schools. It's easy to forget this, but there was lots of good social democratic stuff that was achieved in the first term. The second term saw record investment in our public services come alive in a very tangible way in every constituency, including in my own and in John's, with initiatives such as the Building Schools for the Future programme, which transformed school buildings across the country, and the New Deal in the community zones, regenerating areas of deep poverty. So we started on the long journey away from Thatcherism towards a more social democratic future. But from the middle of the second term, we got stuck in various potholes en route to the promised land. Top-up fees, foundation hospitals, 90 days detention. Labour's thinking was clouded by a new emphasis on marketisation and privatisation. The government was too keen on rhetoric and policies that, as John has said, were shrill, sour and authoritarian. And there was that massive, era-defining mistake, Iraq. But this is only part of the story, in my view, because by the beginning of the third term, it was obvious that we'd failed to capitalise on the huge wave of popularity on which the Labour government was first elected. And I think this had much to do with the collective state of mind of New Labour. As a young Labour Party activist in the late 1990s and early noughties, I was forever advocating that we go further. I was determined that we should be embedding and advancing our politics so they would endure it as powerfully as Thatcherism. But that failed to happen. Why? Because tax credits are all well and good, but a more progressive taxation system would have truly embodied our values. Because the national minimum wage was one of Labour's greatest achievements. But we could have used the public sector to pioneer a living wage. Because Sure Start is Labour's values incarnate, but so too is the comprehensive school ethos, which we should have more passionately and consistently argued for, including those who were talking about it on the platform earlier. Because there is greater equality of opportunity after 13 years of Labour government, but the average FTSE 100 CEO still earns over 120 times the average salary of his workers. I could go on. So New Labour did lots of good things, and I've just spent many months telling people about them on the doorstep, but let's face it, we should have done so much more, and we should have been so much more radical. The reason we did not do more was because of our collective lack of self-confidence. Every time one agitated for more radical change, the leadership would tell us it's not politically feasible. We live in a conservative country, you know. You just can't talk about these things, is what we were always being told. Less, yes, we can. More, no, we can't. And let's get one thing straight. We were not asking for a return to the policy platforms of the 1970s and the 1980s. My generation are lucky. We did not fight the battles of the 1980s. When Labour published its Suicide Note Manifesto, an appropriate description, in 1983, I was 4 years old. When the party was left bewildered after the 1992 general election defeat, I was just 13. My generation wasn't scarred by those experiences, but I think the 80s and early 90s destroyed too many people's faith in the electoral appeal of centre-left politics, despite the huge size of that landslide in 1997. In fact, by the late 1990s,